So without further ado, thank you all for being here. I think our group is finalizing here, and I'm going to pass it on to Letty. Welcome, Letty, from sunny Mexico.
Hello there. It's so nice to be here, and I'm glad to be helping out with this community conversations. America asked me if I wanted to do another talk about that, because there was a talk about how to do virtual learning, distance learning for 3 to 6 a couple of weeks ago. And she thought, gosh, I guess a lot of people asked about elementary. And I said, you know, I'm not really in the classroom right now. I'm supporting some classrooms and schools who are doing this, but I thought I wanted to bring some people in who are actually in the trenches of it right now. So I asked a couple of my friends, Jennifer Kepesh, who is on here right now, and Jess Gagne, who should be popping on. Oh, she's there, yay. And Jess Gagne. So Jennifer and I actually trained together a million years ago at WMI. We have our 6 to 12 training, and she is teaching at a public charter school in the United States, Montessori of the Rio Grande Charter School. Did I say that right, Jen? Yeah, okay. And she is teaching upper elementary, and she is in a virtual setting, and they have been virtual since for a year now. So completely virtual. And then Jess hails from New York. She is working at a Guidepost Montessori school, and she has a new class that she is leading this year, and she is on site. So we're going to be talking about the physical classroom and the virtual classroom, and kind of ping-ponging back and forth between those. And we're going to be talking about the operational logistical aspects of what they're doing during COVID times, and the social and emotional aspects of how they're handling things with the children during these times, and how they're doing academics virtually or with children who have been virtual and now they're on site. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Jennifer and ask her, what are some specific tips and tricks that she has found that has been working in the virtual working now, maybe what wasn't working, what's working now, and you know what she's found that has been helpful. So go ahead, Jen.
Thank you. So we started suddenly into the virtual world in March, and when we did that, we had no idea what the boundaries should be. So we had relatively tight boundaries around how teachers interacted with students. We were not allowed, for example, at that time, to hold a breakout time with an individual student, even if it was recorded. This meant we also didn't really use the breakout rooms that are available for Zoom. And obviously that has changed as we've gotten more comfortable in this virtual environment. I'm able now to hold small group meetings with students and also individual meetings. That the comfort level of the administration on that made a huge difference in being able to be a teacher. To be a Montessori teacher in this environment requires me to really think about what this education is supposed to be, this education for life, this education that allows a child to become independent at a time when they are highly dependent, and at the same time to be able to create bonds among people, me to my students and the students to each other. So, and without my usual tools, without the tool of hanging back and observing, without the tools of looking closely at a student's product over time. So we're still figuring it out. And one thing that I think is harder, perhaps harder in the charter school world, is that we have requirements to our district and to the state. So some of those requirements are very un-Montessori to me. One of the things we must do is have our students on software that checks their progress, so to speak. It's not quite that big brotherish on both math and language. The program iReady is the one our school is using. What it means is students log in twice a day, once for language, once for math, and they follow through on lessons online. They certainly don't replace what I'm doing in the classroom, but I do have to be aware that a lot of their time, an hour of their time every day, is taken up with this program that is different for each child, and different children react quite differently to it. And it colors the way that they look at their other work. So those are some of the challenges we faced. One of the things that I really try and do is make sure that my students have as much autonomy as possible in learning. And I think I could probably find more ways to do that yet. But one of the ways I've been doing that is anytime a student has a project idea, if they want to do a mini report on their own, sure, do that, present it whatever way you want. If they ask me for feedback, I give it. If they ask for help with how to present, I give it. But those mini reports are their opportunity to just dig into something and tell. And I try really hard to remind students every couple of weeks, anybody who's got something they wanted to do research on, don't forget, you can do a mini report. What I have been delighted by is that many students get an enthusiasm and tell others and invite them to work with them. So the way that I handle that, we're online from Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We're online with the students from 8 to 11 with lunch bunch, which is lunchtime 11 to 11:30, also online if you feel like being there. Then I have office hours from 11:30 until 2 o'clock. And so during that office hour time, if students get excited about a project, I set up a Zoom room for them, a breakout room. And in that breakout room, they make all sorts of decisions together. And throughout the week, they will add to a shared document, go do their research, they'll bring it back and have a talk. Typically, they meet once or twice a week. And this is a place where I have been lucky to get some experts who are willing to come and talk to the kids. So we sort of have virtual going out. And then the kids put together a presentation for their peers. They practice it together, and then they do it. So some of the projects that have come up was one little girl just was crazy about ravens and wanted to do something about ravens. And a group of them got together and decided to expand it to all corvids, which are the raven family. And they chose they all researched all the birds, but then they chose which one they would present. We had an expert speak to them about the corvids in New Mexico. They went, even though he brought wonderful pictures, they went and found their own pictures. So this was a project that took 4-ish weeks, around there, 4 weeks, and was across the levels. By the way, we only have 4th and 5th grade. There was another project that some students wanted to do on Lazarus animals. These are animals that were thought extinct and have been found. And they wanted to do it across the whole world. And there were 7 or 8 students who started on that project, and a few dropped out. It took 2 months. And the difference between the 4-week group and the 2-month group is the students who were involved and the ways they interact, and the depth that some of them wanted to go into, the arguing over what should be in there and what shouldn't, the helping on somebody who got overwhelmed. That was just really reflected. It's the same as in a classroom. They were doing this completely on their own time. They were not required to be there. So these projects have come up. There's been a few others, but those are the 2 that really stick out in my mind of students who want to do something like that. And then there have been some other clubs, which are less about creating doing a research that creates something, and more just interest. The big one right now is Toast Club. Toast Club involves people who love toast. They meet on Tuesday. They have officers, they call roll. This is all being done during our lunch bunch time. They will either make, or their mommies make them, toast. They show off what they're putting on their toast. They create surveys. There is a toast newsletter. And so far, some of the things that they have done is they have each made marmalade and of different kinds and dropped it off on one another's porches so that everybody could try it. And then they created a Rube Goldberg how to butter your toast machine that they showed. Each kid talked about how it would look. And they've done a couple of other things, but my goodness, out of something that just seems ridiculous, they have created this incredibly creative experience. And the interactions of how to let each person have their turn, who gets to decide, et cetera, are the same kinds of things that you would see in a classroom. And the socio-emotional connections and bonding is fantastic. So,
Jen, can you real quick jump in a little bit and talk about how you run the virtual day? Like, what are you doing? When are they in small groups, large groups? How do you organize these breakout rooms? Are you there? Are you not there? Things like that.
So what I have found, we tried a lot of different things from March all the way through December, and I'm finally feeling settled on the thing that tends to work best. I really find that structure is pretty important, that they can predict the day and that they can predict the week. And I have them turn in work daily now. And the reason I do that is to make sure that they are following through, and also to give me a window into how well they're understanding the work that I gave them. Not everybody turns in work every day. And those students who fall behind fall behind is the wrong word, but who just are not turning things in, particularly in a given subject, I'll have a meeting with them, which is kind of like our weekly meetings that we would have in the class. And that has proven to be really effective. Not that they quickly start turning in all their stuff, but rather that I understand where the hitches are, whether that's family not getting things online for them, or their hesitancy, or their depression. It just really helps to have a daily feedback of their work. So the day begins at 8. Students log on a little before that and chat. I leave the chat window open for them until we start a lesson. We might chat for 20 minutes about all sorts of things. It's pretty important for them to do that. They might show art, they might bring their pets. That's a good time for a birthday celebration. Around 8:30, I will do a culture lesson typically. And I am finding that I'm doing either something that is human related like history, or I'm doing science. I can't really accommodate both things during the week with only 3 hours with them. They do some stuff on their own offline that I've suggested. Then at 9-ish, we do take a break, and then I have my literary circle pop up. The kids, each day I have a different lit circle group. The other kids all go into the language rooms, and I break those out. I put the name of them. So I have named language groups by black and white birds. So my flickers are in one group and my starlings are in another. And if a group is having a lesson, if several groups are having the same lesson, I'll pop them into one room, and then they can separate if they feel like it, or stay together. But I may just end up doing 5 lessons in a row because they're all doing different things. And what I do is I give them a piece of the lesson. I say, so come up with some examples, or try this. And then I quick go into another room. And I do that for an hour, going back and forth between 3 and 5 rooms. I keep another device open and logged in, and I'll often put that in one room where I know there's a difficulty, so that those kids, out of the corner of my eye, I can watch them I can see what whiteboard they've got up. If I see a fight breaking out or everybody sort of getting blank because they don't know what to do, I pop into that room on that device for a few minutes. That also lets me keep a record of a whiteboard because I can set up my whiteboard in that room and then it's saved. So using the two things, it can be awkward, but it's very helpful for keeping track of a couple groups at a time. So I do that for language, and then we have another break, then I do it for math. We also have a few times during the week that one of those standard things is broken down. Right now, my students are writing these wonderful onomatopoetic animal stories. We did a lesson on onomatopoeia, and we talked about the different noises animals make. And then we talked about, wouldn't it be fun if, like what would an imaginary animal like this make? And then suddenly that warped into, wouldn't it be fun if they met each other and talked to each other? And suddenly we had these stories in the forest. And then they said, and we could write the stories for the little kids and we could read them. So now there's 4 different groups. Almost the whole class is involved in one of these beautiful picture books. I'm so excited for them. And they're coming to an end with them. They're doing the illustration and editing, and they're going to be reading it to the CASA kids. So we have an hour a week or more just devoted to letting them get that work done, so that they can, give back to the community. So that's my usual day. And then the other big thing is office hours. I do have a lot of kids who need short-term help, either with just getting certain kind of work done or just connecting. So I assign certain times of my office hours to certain kids. They come once a week or twice a week. And typically, for a few weeks we do that, and then we taper off, and then I put in a different kid who needs some help with that.
Do you typically do your office hours in the afternoon?
My office hours start at 11:30, right after lunch bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And they go until about 2 o'clock now. We were all in agreement that we would have an hour to an hour and a half every day, or 3 times a week, I guess. And mine have just morphed because it just seems to really support and ground the kids to have some one-on-one time. During office hours, I might help them with, ostensibly, I'm helping them with, a language packet or something. And I do give them a little help on that. But mostly I do things like, so how's the new puppy? And I love the color you painted your bedroom. And, you're looking sad today. It seems like, and you're not answering my questions very much. Are you okay? And so a lot of it is that basic one-on-one mentoring that we wouldn't otherwise have.
And can you talk a little bit about, somebody asked this in the chat and I thought it would be fun to expand on, is what is lunch bunch? What do you do during lunch bunch? And why do you do what you do during lunch bunch?
Well, lunch bunch was something at least some other teacher at school came up with the term, and I don't know whether they got it from outside or if it was their own idea. But basically, our schedule officially on our website is from 8 to 11. We Zoom with the kids. At 11 to 11:30, they have lunch. From 11:30 to 12:30 in my class, they work. Then they have a PE break with our PE teacher online. And then from 12:30 to 2, they finish their afternoon work. They have a packet from me that is follow-up lessons to what we've done in class. So I have to plan a lot ahead of time. When it comes to lunch bunch, kids are allowed to just stay on and do whatever, but it has evolved into kind of a schedule of things they do. So there's Toast Club, as you know, on Tuesday, which, by the way, is going to have a franchise in another class, because some of the younger kids are siblings in my class, and they've been watching it and they've decided they want to do Toast Club in their class. So Toast Club Tuesday, there's a day that they do 2 truths and a lie game, which with little kids who have not had a lot of experience is pretty hilarious. And they just guess, like they make 3 statements. One of them is a lie, and everybody has to guess which it is. While they're doing this, they have a screen up and they're coloring, making pictures. They have Spaceman, which is that game, we used to call it Hangman, but we don't do nooses anymore. So we make a space helmet instead. And so that one's really fun. And they often ask me to join them on that one. And then and that's just a screen with a word that they have to guess the letters of. There's a game called Mafia, which is normally a game you play in the real world. You play it in a circle, and a narrator takes somebody out and gives them a role, and they come back, and nobody knows who has which roles, and you have to guess. And the fun thing about it is the narrator tells the story of how somebody was killed, and how the sheriff investigated, and how an angel came and revived them. And then they add all sorts of stuff. And in this setting, they tell the story, and then the person who got picked to be the murder victim will die a dramatic death. It's always really fun to see that on Zoom. And so they play that game, and then they often do all sorts of things like coloring. Like the other day, they kind of discovered the color wheel, or more advanced aspects of the color wheel, because they were mixing colors online or on screen. And then they would say, if we add the purple into this, it has a lot of gray, so it'll make it darker. And so they were really experimenting with the color palette. So it's also, like most of those games recur most weeks, but they sometimes bring something else in, or they read a story, or they tell each other knock-knock jokes. It's just, the purpose of this is just really to let anybody who wants to just goof off with their friends. And there's a core group that comes, but it has steadily grown, so that where it used to be 2 or 3 people, now it's like a core of about 6. And most kids come most days. It seems to be really important to them.
That sounds like a really great way to get things going in the virtual world that, mimic, I guess, in a Montessori classroom, the children are, connecting and collaborating, and it's really, you have to basically build time in for them to do that in the elementary years in a virtual setting. And it sounds like you've done a really great job at doing that. One more quick question, then I wanted to ask Jess a couple of things actually, and which was, how are you, finding that you're able, this is addressing the social and emotional development, the lunch bunch, but are you finding that it's been hard for kids in the virtual world? Have they expressed they're sad and they miss coming to school, and how are you kind of supporting them through that?
I have quite a few, a lot of children who are disengaging are doing so academically more than socially. Many of the students outside of school are involved in a Google meetup group or something like that has nothing to do with me. Their parents have done it. Some of them are doing TikTok or other kinds of social media with their friends, or some of them are involved on drawing sites and invite their friends. I don't have any connection to that, but I know that it is going on. Some of the kids are definitely having a lot of socio-emotional problems. And it's very concerning. This week, actually starting on Wednesday, I have a small group of students, because we've been one of the most restricted places in the United States, by the way, New Mexico has, in terms of how many people are allowed to get together, what the rules are around letting students back to school, et cetera. It's been one of the most restrictive all the way along. And next, we have loosened it a little bit, and next week I'm bringing in a small group of 4 or 5 kids, and we'll be masked and we'll be outside, we'll be doing the practices. And I don't even know what I'm going to do with them yet. I just really want them to be next to other bodies. And these are kids who need that social stimulation in a different way. And so we'll see how that is. But this is the first time I've been allowed to do that. So one of the other things that I do to help that go on, Letty, is in their breakout rooms, when they are doing classwork, I seed opportunities for discussion. Like I say, you guys all come up together with the longest sentence you can come up with that has these qualities. or everybody put up a sentence and then modify the next person's sentence on the screen. Or Letty, would you please call on everybody to give an answer to questions 1, 2, and 3? And then would you help, since you're really good at this concept, would you help explain which answer is correct and why? And that's getting more and more conversation going around lessons. I make a point of finding some way that they can interact with the lessons. If I don't do that, what ends up happening is they all turn off their screens and they might go do their iReady or they might do their work offline. But if I do seed it with let's work together, then it helps a lot. And the other thing for socio-emotional, again, is that just that one-on-one with me or 1-on-3 with me, where I really try to spend a lot of time asking about their puppies. I tell them a story from my weekend. I just make sure they know they're seen as a human being and not a box.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jen. Okay, so Jen has been in the virtual world for the last year. It looks like she gets to jump into the analog world pretty soon, a little bit maybe. And Jess has had the experience of you were online last year, right? Towards the end of the year. And she actually has made a cross-country move. So she's at a different school than she was last year. So she's not only she's doing schooling. They're masked and they're in the classroom. So they're actually in the classroom, but she has a brand new classroom of children who have been under lockdown previously, and now they are in the classroom. And so I wanted to ask, Jess, I don't know all of the sort of COVID precautions that you're taking at your school right now and, what you're doing in the classroom, ask you a little bit about that. And also, what kinds of things you're doing to support their social and emotional development, because obviously they've been they were not in the classroom or around people for a while, and now they are. And did you see things coming up that you really needed to support a little more than you would in a non-pandemic year?
Yes, for sure. We did see a lot of that. From an operational standpoint, I'm really lucky that my school and the larger organization that my school is a part of put a lot in place for us and put together a training for us over the summer in preparation of opening in person. So what we do in the classroom on a day-to-day basis is some sort of combination of those health and safety restrictions and guidelines that we're required to impose, and things that the team had come up with for us to help integrate that with our Montessori philosophy. And then also just what I've seen and heard from other schools who had gone back in person before we did. We started just after Labor Day, so which is normal on the East Coast of the US. But a lot of people on the West Coast had started a couple weeks before us. So I was lucky enough to get feedback from some people saying this is working and this isn't. So I'm really fortunate in that way. And one of the things that we have seen that we just kind of learned was necessary after the first couple of weeks together, and that I heard from other teachers that was helpful, was the idea of having a designated area in the classroom where students could take a mask break. Because especially in the beginning of the year, they were coming from their homes where they don't have to wear a mask all day. So maybe they were used to wearing the mask out in public, but it was only for short stretches of time, really. So for them to be able to, and some of my children, when we started the year, were 5 years old. So to be able to come into a classroom and sit all day with your mask on was really challenging. So we had a designated mask break table where you could sit with your mask off and it was away from other children. And that was really helpful to reduce anxiety around, like, you have to wear a mask. And we don't have any outdoor space at our school. So that kind of added a little bit of stress. It's not like we can just go out and, you can go take a lap around the playground if you're feeling anxious in your mask. So we actually have a space in the classroom where you can go, you can sit and you can take your mask off, and you're 6 feet away from everyone else. And you can just get a breath or whatever you need to do. So we found that to be really, really helpful. And my school also came up with the idea of mask bags. So when you are having snack or lunch, they do take their masks off to eat snack or lunch. So instead of placing them on the table, they put them inside of a brown paper bag, which in the morning they would find in their cubby, and they could take it out and they could decorate it in between work. So that kind of gave them ownership over it, made it a little bit less of a drag, I guess, made it a little bit more fun for them. Well, you can decorate your mask bag, and then at lunch you have like a special mask bag to put your mask in. And since I have lower elementary students, I think it was really helpful for them to kind of have that ownership. Yes, so we do have a lot of friendly reminders going on. Something that the children have come up with themselves is, in the beginning of the year, there were a lot of specific reminders like, Letty, put on your mask, that made children feel really self-conscious. So we decided if you notice somebody's not wearing their mask, you can kind of just raise your hand, or if it's in a classroom setting, you can just kind of ring the bell and say mask check. And that reminds everybody, your mask needs to be up over your nose. It needs to be completely on. Because yes, there were lots of reminders, lots of conversations, lots of lessons about that in the beginning of the year. And now it's just kind of become part of the norm of our classroom, which is interesting enough. And some of the other things is that we do keep disposable masks, child-sized disposable masks, which you can get, I mean, in New York, you can just get them on like any street corner, but I do think they're available online as well. So we do keep disposable masks in the classroom as well. If a child is comes to school wearing a mask that is a little bit too small or too big or uncomfortable or gets a stain, we have disposable masks available that they can just come and take if they need to. Obviously, we have lots of other procedures. We wash our hands a lot more than normal. So a lot of children parents were invited to send their children in with lotion, hand lotion, because their hands can get really dry. We have hand sanitizer in several areas of the classroom if they feel like they need it. We wash our hands anytime we enter the classroom, whether that's before coming in the morning, coming in from recess, going to after school, before you eat snack. And obviously, yeah, the hand sanitizer is available. And we do a lot of cleaning. So we use natural cleaners in the classroom, and we clean all the time, and it's become really fun. The children actually really enjoy it, which I'm grateful for. And it is someone's job at the end of the day to clean all the tables. It's somebody else's job to clean the materials on each shelf. Someone asked in the chat about special needs challenges. I do have a few children with special needs and sort of sensory issues, but it's nothing really as severe as I can imagine would be a challenge for some other children. So the children in my class have been okay with the mask break. There is sometimes some frustration and, just children feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And in that case, maybe we will all go for a walk outside if it's a nice day or something like that, just to make sure we can get some fresh air. We have a big field that we go to when we play at recess, so they don't wear their masks at recess. This year we have extended the recess period, so they do have a lot more time outside with fresh air and no masks. So I think that allows them a break in the middle of the day. I only have about 9 children in my class this year, which makes a lot of this a lot easier. It's very easy for us to keep our distance. It's easy for us to, make sure that no more than 2 people are sitting at a table having snack together. So yeah, I think that I'm lucky in that sense as well, because if it were more children, especially with the size of my classroom, I could see a lot more challenges coming into play there. And luckily, I am one of the few people who I do have a window that opens in my classroom, so we can actually get some fresh air, which is huge.
Do you, Jess, do you have them social distance in the classroom, or with the masks and the cleaning precautions, is that, that's sufficient?
I see someone shrugging. We talk about it all the time. Whether or not it actually happens when they're wearing the masks is kind of hit or miss. And it's really interesting to hear how it comes up amongst the children. So sometimes there will be two children reading together, like all snuggled up. And then there will be other times that those same children will be like, hey, social distance, please give me space. So it's really, it's kind of hit or miss. And I think realistically, we just require that they have their masks on if they are, closer together. And, there was a lot of communication with parents in the beginning of the year where we kind of said, like, your children are lower elementary children. They are going to want to play with each other's hair sometimes. They're going to want to read each other a book and be kind of like snuggling up. So luckily all the parents in my school, and again, it's a really small class, were like, yeah, no problem. We all have play dates anyway. So that kind of helps for us to have eased up the restrictions a little bit. But we do regularly check in about social distancing, because it's also really important for them to understand that it's a little bit different when we're in the classroom than it is for them in the outside world. They may go see somebody from outside of school who may not be comfortable with them getting within 6 feet. So it's really important for us to constantly be reiterating that, the safe distance is 6 feet. We did a lot of we got out the rulers and the tape and all of that fun stuff. We do take temperatures at the door in the morning. And one thing I forgot to write down too is we also take temperatures after lunch. So in the beginning of the year, I was doing that, and it was taking the midday temperature check was taking a lot of time out of our day. And it was really stressful. And one day, one of my older children asked if it could be a job. And I was like, I guess. And now it takes like 15 minutes. They have a great time. They pretend that it's a transaction where you have to pay $5 imaginary to get your temperature taken. And then you can go sit down and they tell you, you're all clear. You can go to school. And they really enjoy it, which is great. I wish I had thought of that in the beginning of the year. And they're much better at using the digital thermometer than I am. So that's super helpful. Yeah. And
Jess, can you speak a little bit about, sort of the social and emotional aspects, if you've noticed that, them being not able to, I mean, this might be more towards the beginning of the school year, because maybe it's a little more normalized now, but, did you notice, children maybe had a hard time resolving conflicts, or asking a friend to play, or things that, that they hadn't been doing for a little while, maybe were a little more challenging than usually, knowing that you have a new class that you're not familiar with too, but just, based upon your years of experience, did it seem a little different?
It does definitely seem different this year. And I think there are, as you said, a lot of factors that play into that. One of them being that all of the children in my class were new to Montessori. Another being that it is a small class. It's only 9 children. I started with 10, but one had to move back to their home country, which is a bummer. We miss them. They're our pen pal. And another factor being that a lot of my children are only children. So, and in New York, and I wasn't in New York during the height of all the lockdowns in last March, but in New York, many of my children did not leave their apartment, literally did not go for a walk around the block, did not go to the grocery store. They were just in their apartment, and the only children were just with their parents and maybe a pet for about 6 months before they came back to school in September. So it was a very big adjustment. So in terms of what we did to support their social and emotional growth, and just honestly to kind of bring them back to a more normalized level, was we did have lots of grace and courtesy lessons to start the year. I would say for the first couple weeks, we were very light on the academic lessons, and I told the great stories and all of that, and we worked with some materials, but the majority of our lessons were grace and courtesy lessons. We did a lot of role playing. We did a lot of imagining scenarios and acting them out. We made a lot of posters. So a lot of children, they needed help regulating things like, when they were in a situation where they felt frustrated by what another child was saying or doing, they needed the actual language to say, I feel frustrated that you are taking my pencil because I was using it. Like, they really didn't have the language, or they, had sort of maybe forgotten how to, express themselves, because when you're at home with your family, there's a different way of expressing your needs that is maybe less direct than it needs to be in the classroom. So we had a lot of explicit lessons about language, and also the language for when you're not ready to talk to someone, to tell someone, I need time to think, or I need space, or I need to go sit in this chair, you know? So really to be specific about what their needs were, and to work on conflict resolution was one of the big grace and courtesy lessons that we had, to have each child share from their perspective what they felt the issue was. And then also to practice listening when the other person was sharing their perspective. That was a huge, it took us weeks to get to the point where they could have a conversation without interrupting each other. And they still sometimes need some adult support. But even having the language to say, you know, Letty and I are having a conflict. Can we please have some adult support? You know, that was really helpful for them too. Yeah, one of the things we talked about in the beginning of the year was we had a lesson on acrostic poetry, and we talked about how one of the things for acrostic poetry is we can think before we speak. So we can think, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it interesting? Or is it important? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And really trying to go through all of the items on that list before you actually do choose to say something out loud, because it may be okay for you to say to your parents, you know, I don't like this pasta, but it might not be okay for you to say to a friend who you're working with, I don't like that color for, you know, this poster. To find, you know, kinder, gentler ways to communicate was really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
You also mentioned when we were talking the other day, maybe you had a little time where they could air their grievances
Yes.
when they were having like some emotions going on.
Yeah, so we have class meetings every other Friday, and it turned out that some of our class meetings really needed to be just time for them to, I call it airing our grievances, but it really was just a time where I just invited the children, kind of reminded them it was a safe space, and invited them to share. If there's something that somebody did to upset them, they can say, you know, I felt really upset last week when someone stole my pencil, and just kind of like get it off of their chest. But then also for them to take responsibility for something that they might have said or done that, you know, was bothering them. Like, you know, last week I took my friend's pencil case and I'm feeling really bad about that, so I'd like to give it back to them. And it was a huge success. We ended up spending way longer than I thought we would, just kind of sharing these ideas back and forth. Some children shared things from previous years that they obviously just needed to share and get off their chest. And so it helped us to be more of a cohesive community, but it also helped the children to know that it's okay for them to, you know, talk about something that's bothering them, and it's okay to express what they need. So that has become part of our tradition. When we don't have our class meeting, we kind of have just like a chance to like say what's on our mind, and it's a safe space and we can talk about it. Another thing I'm thinking of,
Go ahead.
Letty, sorry, just one sec.
Oh,
but
I was just going to say, I read an article recently that said that just like our muscles atrophy if we don't exercise regularly, our social skills and social and emotional development can also atrophy. So, you know, if you do have children who've been at home for long lengths of time, you know, particularly if they're only children or whatnot, or even adults, and they're not having those real live organic interactions, or, you know, we need to somehow either support them online, or when they come back to real life time, they're going to need a lot of support interacting in a three-dimensional environment, because, you know, that's a very different experience.
Very different, yeah. And I've also found that the like setting up our schedule for the day and then sticking to that routine and staying consistent has been really important. So we also have a time at the end of each day where we do reflections, and the reflection could be roses and thorns. Like, what was the best part of your day? What was a part that was not so good? What do you hope for tomorrow? And then now that we've gotten further into the year, the children have invented other ways to reflect on their day and express what they're feeling. And so that's been a super important part of our routine together as a classroom as well.
It looks like Jen has her hand raised. Jen?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I'm finding in that this issue of social skills, we have to continue in the virtual world to build those skills up. We use certain kinds of phrases. We have specific lessons. Some of them have to do with reading different emotions on people's faces. We'll send them into a group, a breakout room, and practice different faces and what that could mean, what you can say when you think somebody is upset, etc. So we do a lot of that kind of practice online as well. And those are lessons that are built into my curriculum. Or my week as well. And I think we just all have to remember those kids really do need that practice.
Mm-hmm. We designed a game together in the beginning of the year, a matching game we had a lesson on drawing a self-portrait with our masks on and how to draw a face really simply with a mask. And we worked together to make a matching game that was just different expressions in the eyes, and like how you can, draw different expressions in the eyes, and then we matched those with emotions. And then when they played, if you get the match, then you act it out with your partner. So yeah, things like that are super important for sure. And oh, Jen, you said something else that reminded me of something else, and now I can't remember what it was.
Well, it's totally okay. It'll come back to you, but I know we only have a little bit more time left, and I wanted to open it up to questions that anybody might have that they want to ask in real time. I know there have been some in the chat, and I think most of them have been answered. Jess was toggling back and forth during her talk, and then Jennifer answered a couple of questions. But anybody have any real life ones that real time that they want to dissect? Maybe you're having a challenge in the classroom, or you're wondering about something, or you had an insight, anything.